I'm Liz, this is Blitz City DIY, and today is episode 4 of Prime Things I Learned This Week. And this week, I started learning about Linux. Now, for those of you that don't know, Linux is an open source operating system. It's something I've wanted to learn about for a while. It's open source in that anyone can kind of do their own thing with it. It's also free. And I've done some amateur coding with things like Arduino, and I want to get more into it. There's a thing called Code Academy, which is a free online resource where you can kind of go through these guided lessons on different coding languages. I did the one on JavaScript because that's most closely related to the C language that's used for Arduino. And I noticed just going through that course once that I was able to code a lot more comfortably and kind of really read the code and understand what certain commands were doing instead of having to kind of rely on the open source community for any code questions I had. I could actually kind of think through the process of what I wanted to do, and I want to get to a point where I'm a lot more comfortable with that for DIY projects that I want to do with Arduino. I also want to get into Raspberry Pi, and about a year ago I built my first computer, and you will have seen the first intro video on the upgrade of that computer now. And before that, I really didn't know anything about computers. I basically knew how to run like simple pieces of software, and I actually started Arduino when I was in college, and that was about 4 years ago now, and I was really going in blind and just kind of following open source pieces of code to kind of piece together projects. And I always felt kind of like a DIY fraud because I wasn't actually writing my code myself. I could do little tweaks to like change what inputs the code was looking at on Arduino, but I couldn't really do anything innovative. So that's kind of why I did the JavaScript course, and I liked it, and I got into computers from a hardware standpoint now, and because of that, I'm kind of now landed at looking at Linux and learning how Linux works. And there is a course for free through edX, which, if you don't know what edX is, it's kind of this collective of MIT, Harvard. They essentially do these things, what's called massive open online courses, or they're called MOOCs for short, where people can kind of audit these courses and go at their own pace, and they're college level or above courses where you can get a lot of really awesome information. And so there is an edX course on Linux, and it was created with the Linux Foundation, and so I signed up for that this week and started it. I'm basically right where they show you how to load Linux and boot from media, and that I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to do a boot from a drive that will then be contained on the drive, because I'm not quite ready to switch totally over to Linux on my machine. I'm not sure I ever will at this point, because I want to play around with it. I kind of want to get into it. I've kind of played around with the idea of building a server at some point for all my media files and for streaming and things, and I think Linux would definitely be the way to go for the way that I would want to go for something like that. And you know, I'm a big fan of Windows 10. I think it's a really awesome operating system, but you know, there's something about knowing that if something happens to my Windows product key, or you know, they decide, oh, we're not going to support this operating system, and there's money involved. You know, the free upgrade to Windows 10 was really nice, but you know, who's to say that the next upgrade will be free or anything? And a PSA, in case you have not heard, for those that are, you know, hitting ignore for those update to Windows 10 buttons, it will cost, I think it's $120 or around that ballpark area at the end of July. And there's something about knowing that there is a fully functional operating system with a lot of compatibility. If you look at even Nvidia launched its new line of graphics cards, the 1080 and soon the 1070 as well. And if you look at the specs, which I was looking at the 1070 specs because those were released Wednesday, you can see that it says it's also compatible with Linux. So it's something I just want to learn more about, and I think doing the edX course will be really helpful with how successful it was to do the Code Academy JavaScript course. And so far the course is really good. Like it asks you like multiple choice questions and as you're going through, and again, this is free. It's a free resource, and there are a lot of other things on edX too. The possibilities are huge for what you can take and learn about. And you know, if you ever want to just learn something, it's basically there. And I mean, there is a fee if you want to get like a certificate at the end or whatever, but I will not, and you have to pay for that, but I'm not going to do that. And they basically do that because there is the discussion in education with the massive open online courses of how is this financially, feasible. And I mean, luckily the institutions that are involved are so established and so geared towards research and bettering society that I think that a lot of their doing the edX courses are related to the idea of kind of giving back and creating a foundation online for people to be able to access information. So, because I really respect the edX courses, and I'd never taken one before. I'd only ever heard of them. So, and I just came across it through just a general Google search because I was like, Linux would be kind of cool, and right now I'm kind of bored, so let's look up Linux. So, yeah, that's what I started learning this week. And I will be doing videos documenting booting to Linux for the first time and kind of playing around with it. And if I ever do get to the point, which hopefully I will, I think I will, get to the point where I'll build a server, I'll definitely document that and any tips I learn. I mean, I don't think I will be some Linux expert or like a contributor to the kernel, which is what the operating system communicates to the hardware with. I don't think I'll be one of those people, but I mean, that's what's great about open source and the online communities and everything, even with things like Arduino and Raspberry Pi. Like, it's just a lot of people working together to share information and complete like real goals. And that's another thing that I've always thought was really interesting about Linux. So I'm really excited to start learning about that and start that journey down to Linux. So with that, it was a quick episode this week, but I just wanted to kind of share Linux. And one thing about Linux, I know from my standpoint, one reason why I've never really looked into it is it's a little intimidating. If you don't have a professional IT background, the idea of like, oh, it's an open source operating system, it's a little scary, But that's how I felt when I thought about building a computer for the first time, which I'll talk about that more in depth as I upload the videos for transferring my computer into the new case and everything. The main reason I started looking into building a computer was the idea that I could get more performance for a lot less money than if I bought an all-in-one or a laptop with the specs that I have in my machine. So, and it was intimidating because I didn't know anything about the hardware, but I researched and I found out about it, and now like I know a pretty decent amount. And I think with tech these days, you hear about Silicon Valley and you hear about like people just being brilliant, like these wonderkins who just code this magic piece of software and they're set, and it just seems so unobtainable, and it is obtainable. I think they want you to think it's not obtainable, but it is if you have an interest and there are the resources available, especially in the open source community and the DIY communities, that you can learn basically from a foundation of nothing how to do something that seems like something a mad scientist would be up to, but you can do it. So, with that, if you liked this video, let me know. If you didn't, also let me know. And if you want more content like this delivered to your YouTube feed, personally just for you, please subscribe. This has been Blitz City DIY.